Hey, welcome back. We're going to go over just a brief beginning for the history exam for the graduate record equivalency exam. It's just really some brief information. Okay, let's look at some of the questions and the sources from where they come from. The Ice Age and a Quest for a New World. And remember, if you want to try to understand what's happening here, this word here, Beringia, okay, actually comes from this word here, Bering Sea. So if you want to get Beringia here, you need to actually look at, from where the word comes from. And this is before the Common Era, like this is how it looked. Here's where I got from where I got the map. You probably click on the link and see it yourself. But anyway, if you look at it, it's all near the Arctic Ocean. That's over here. And right over here is Russia. And we know that below Russia was like China coming over here later, but they're going to talk to you about the Ice Age and how people started getting to the United States. So if you can just remember that at one time the people from Beringia, came from the Bering Sea. Then they went over through Alaska. Remember, they used to call that the Yukon territories. And then they went over to Canada, got over here to the United States. Yukon River is where a lot of people crossed, thinking somehow they would come and get gold. And we'll get into this in Alaska because this goes back into the 1800s and early 1900s. You get into the gold rush. That is another um, video, though. Okay. Okay, so look, here's a picture, early Neanderthal, as some people put it. Homo sapiens, we know this. We all came from them. We evolved over time, less hair on our faces, but this is an early Neanderthal, and most of the Neanderthals came from this area, Russia, parts of Europe, and later pretty much went up here and migrated towards the Arctic Ocean, went over to Antarctica, and you can see I got this from Maps of the World. Later, the first people to enter Russia later were called Cossacks. These people had Asian heritage. That's during Kublai Khan, the Mongolian era. That's the 1200s. So if you ever want to remember the Ice Age, these are two of the most popular groups, Denisovans and the Neanderthals. So if you ever have a question that doesn't concern one of these, it has to do with this Ice Age here. They ask you something like, was it the Mongolians? Just know that was later. Okay, Cossacks, we're going into even after the Mongolians, and we get into them. That's really more Russian history. Um, okay, so the first Neanderthals to come to America, and look, if you're coming from Russia, going through the Arctic Ocean, going over here through Greenland, Iceland, over here, somehow went over through the Arctic Ocean and came on over into United States. But here's the funny part. They settled closer over here, more closer to California. Okay, so keep that in mind because later that's going to play an important part when we get into some of the first Americans coming from Mexico. And we get into the Mayas and Incans and their relatives, who were what we would call now modern day Native Americans, but also how they got here because some of them were of mixed heritage between Mexicans and Native Americans. Okay, so American civilization, as far as we're concerned for this test, there may be something else, but it really begins with the descendants of the Mexicans and the Mexican Americans. And here's why. When you click on here on this map, which I found from Commons Wikipedia, you're talking really about Central America, which is over here. You're talking about going over through like Panama, going up, and these are the people here that came from them. We've all heard of the Mayans and the Great Mayan culture and the Incans and how they were buried under, and we still have some Mayans found in Peru, found all over South America, some of their civilizations. But the Olmecs were in the Americas during 400 before Common Era. That's the first group. That's for the GRE now. Okay, that's not necessarily like, maybe standard for historians, but for the graduate record exam, you want to know that the first people were the Olmecs. Okay, then after them, the Mayans and Incans came later. Okay, who are the people who were from these areas here, Central America? Those people were Hokum, the Anasazi, the Mississippians, the Hopewells, and the Adinas. So, like, if you can remember these groups, because there is a book about this called Anasazi, the spider. Now, I was thinking that was more like kind of even an African name, but it's more really former Central Americans. And think of this, we have a state in America called Mississippi. Well, look at that. Believe it or not, they were a group of people who were from some of those Central American tribes. Okay, so if we were looking at which group of Native Americans most likely lived in Florida, and we went over that the first group came from California and came through here, okay, to get rid of these because your first people were in where? They weren't in Florida. They were on the other side. They were in California. So be Cherokees. So if you know like time and place, you know that these are off because these came from Central America. Okay, so you're going to choose the Cherokees here. And this is something test makers may do. You'll go, oh my God, I forgot. Or you'll say, there's no Mississippians this. And if they ask you who was around in Central America that, were descendants of the Mexicans, you say, well, the Mississippians, that's a state of here in the United States. But it was. So that's how we get that process of elimination there. So you have the Cherokees. Okay, next. Which people most likely migrated through Antarctica during 800 before a common area? Now, would it have been the Cossacks? No, the 1200s. Remember I said it was one of these two groups? And you have this answer here, the Mongolians. Okay, so you're either going to go the Denisovians or the Neanderthals. And remember, they were the first people to kind of grow all over. So your answer is probably going to be D. And most people would get that easily. Just a brief reminder of how you go over these things. Thanks for watching.